Hi everyone. Today I would like to discuss with you the supplantation, which is an alchemical term for the process of the energy that we're going through right now. Now, this supplantation has to do with the displacement from one particular aeon into the next. The next aeon has to do with how we are bringing in infinite potential into this reality. Now, in order for us to be able to make this transcendence or this process to go in more fluently, we would require to understand a few things at hand. And the particular reason I chose for this information for us to detangle is in reality something to do with the sigil magic that was projected or drafted into the actual seal of the life, death, rebirth cycle as such. And for any one of you who are familiar with that particular energy, that is also in reference the Ouroboros as such. Now, first of all, before I kick off, I would like to explain that we must understand that the meaning in the word of the Ouroboros is very important because of its creative sounds in the beginning of the word itself. The O or the O or the oro, that sound has to do with a very old primordial sound of create, and boros, that which is serpentine-like or energy that is dying off and then rebirthing itself again. So now, contrary to how and where this particular symbol was found originally, comes from Egypt as such, and was then later on used by the Western societies to then, I suppose, imprint or project into this reality what it was that they required to do. Now, aside from the fact that we are aware from previous video, the last one, particularly about the fact that what they, as in they, when I refer to them as those who seek to live eternally, forever, in other words, those who seek to live forever in the physical reality, are then subjecting themselves to the belief of the Materialism Philosophy, which then was originally then brought forward as a means to an end type of program, one could say, or a script that was put into place for people to follow. And why am I standing in a room that does not look like the normal? Is because of the absolute chaotic noise that I am experiencing today, which is related to this particular displacement as such. There is essentially perhaps a sense of chaos that may be experienced by some of you, that might be, for those who are more sensitive, feel as if you can't really find your own thoughts as such, but this is temporary. And by the time some of you will watch this video, will probably be the second or the third day of this particular displacement frequency as such. It does not have anything else other to do than with regards to the movement of the natural order of this universal mind that is essentially going towards the next part of its evolutionary cycle as such. So now, to interrupt myself again, we need to understand that the Ouroboros was essentially drafted into, or they drafted into the Ouroboros symbology and created it into a sigil seal, which essentially has a lot of power once one looks at it and one's mental state observes it and sees, oh, but this is birth, rebirth. that's a beautiful symbol, and people tattoo it all over their bodies and stuff like that, when in actual fact what it really stands for is to create a stronger capitalistic materialism frequency as such. So now, in terms of the materialistic fundamentals, or the materialism philosophy, which is also then known as the new religion, and you will look forward to it with nothing, this has a lot to do with that foundation as such. And while we're busy discussing this particular subject in this manner of sharing the information with one another, as you are sitting and listening to what I'm saying, we are essentially dismantling that particular frequency. Before we can dismantle it, it was noted to me that we must dismantle this in a very systematic, particular way with absolute delicacy, so that we are not cutting off our own original existence or our own life, death, rebirth process, but in actual fact cutting off that which was grafted onto that particular symbol as such. And in that way, this is how we then set that energy free, and we then bring in a new energy to heal that energy that was dismantled in itself. So the next part of the subject matter is rather important to understand, because I will then add in a snippet of a video which I will put on my website for you to see, which explains exactly how capitalism operates in a very simple way. Granted that they refer to South Africa and people who are existing in the southern hemisphere as below sub-existence, which is in actual fact they call us in South Africa sub-Sahara, which means we are sub to their existence. We are below them, which in actual fact makes me laugh, because what in reality they are doing is really then projecting into this reality the awareness of the frequency that we are unearthing ourselves out of this cave that we were put into back in the day as titans. And for those who are aware, please look at the video, the We Are Titans, and it ties into the birth of the Mirasol Aeon as such. I will put the link at the end of this description. It is very important for you to observe that video and then to listen to this video, because the two are related to one another. And for those who have observed and have been part of this channel for a long time, I again say thank you to all of you who have been subscribing and sharing the information as such, and have been working on the changes within yourselves, because this is how we are operating. We are changing the reality literally individually at a time, each individual in sovereign, unique whole consciousness at a time, one at a time. And we also know that we are being reminded that the original blueprint or covenant of our Adamic existence must be honored in relation to our agreement that we have agreed to be aware that Great Spirit is operating through us while we are operating within it. So in other words, we, the plural, are Great Spirit. We are Great Spirit in plural with individual consciousness and individual freedom. We matter to ourselves, and once we matter to ourselves, we are then elevated within a higher state of consciousness. And once we see that, we are then able to change the frequencies of this reality as it stands right now, which in actual fact it is happening as we speak. The next thing I would like to explain to you is, how did this all come about? How did they graft into that symbol what it was that they required? And in order for us to understand that, we must take go back a little further when we are looking at the origins of the human divine experience as such. And in actual fact, we must also look at why it was important for us to operate and learn from where we were once. And many of you can remember I had explained that we are coming from the primordial, and we are the primordial. And then from the primordial existence comes a divine human experience. And this does not mean that we venerate or make idols of the human existence as such. It means that we honor this embodiment as a house or a vehicle for Great Spirit to operate within, while we, having attained our own individual consciousness, using our souls or anima mundi to operate this reality as it is. Our original human existence comes from a very long time ago. I'm not going to give you timelines. This is not about time. This is about what we once were given to understand about ourselves and who we are. When I speak about us as humans, I'm speaking about every single element that exists in a human body embodiment, humanoid embodiment, whether we are physically human or non-human. Earthling, we are earthlings, those who live and exist in this reality as such. And the earthling is temporary vestige attached to this reality, temporary dwelling, where we will operate and exist and function from what it is that we have to learn and observe, so that we may bring back to our original source, which is us as Great Spirit in plural, the womb of Great Spirit. We will return back there once we finish functioning in this physical form. So the natural process of passing on as such. It is natural because it's part of the transitioning of reaching a higher level. There should be no fear connected to that sense of awareness as such. The divine human original experience was essentially designed to attain and become aware of its original divinity. I don't like the word divinity, but I haven't found another word for it to fit it. So for purposes of this particular video, this is why I'm bringing that word in for us to understand. And humans were made to be aware in their primordial existence that they are and were original in their absoluteness, their self-actualized state of consciousness. In other words, humanity in the very, very first beginning of time on this plane, which was linear, as we are speaking in a linear space right now, with spatial awareness attached to it. We must understand that the human existence was essentially relating itself back to its creator experience, its original form. And in such, we must understand that in order for us to function and move forward and evolve essentially and progress, it was important that we would be made aware that our integration into this planetary existence or this earth plane had to do with becoming aware of our relationship with regards to nature, our relationships with regards to our own nature and the nature that we are existing in. Mother Nature, you name it, all kinds of nature that you're looking at right now. And then so while we're becoming aware and experience and explore, we're learning to feed our physical forms. We were learning to become aware of the relationship of animals, the fellowship with animals and nature and itself. And essentially, humanity functioned and lived within harmony of the nature itself. If humanity needed to hunt for food, it was essentially made very clear that it is done with respect and consciousness in awareness. And in so, and I apologize for all of the notifications in the background, which is kind of bizarre because it happens right now, as you know. Please bear with me. So, because it was important for human nature to become aware of its natural process going forward, it was then decided that there would be certain people of society that would want to assist in the human process going forward. Essentially, like us, initiates that would assist and bring in that understanding that, yes, we can be part of this reality. No, we are not allowed to worship it. Yes, we can agree to disagree. Yes, we can have individual consciousness. Yes, we can also agree to disagree, and we can still be at peace with one another, irrespective of race, color, creed, and nationality. That was how it was then. Then, of course, as you know, a force of seeking more than what was required at the time had then started to undermine that particular process for us to exist in. And that force had then materialized itself as the philosophy of materialism, which then came from around, well, it became more popular within the 15th century, perhaps even earlier. I'm, again, like I said, not going to be bringing in timelines as such. So, what is important for us to understand is obviously you would find the wise, I want to be sarcastic and say the wise ass, but that one that obviously wanted to know more because it got greedy, to want to expand more because it needed something to exploit because it was bored, or it couldn't understand the process, so it required and sought out another form of something that they could hold in place under the umbrella of, we must bring in and keep the old primordial source of knowledge. We cannot let the primordial source of knowledge ever integrate into this reality. So essentially what I'm trying to tell you is we are dealing with an element that is extremely wise in terms of the primordial wisdom that the human species originally was made aware of. Okay, so they know the rules. That's why they have been trying everything in their way to freeze humanity in the primordial soup consciousness, which means dream world, dreamy, not dream world as such, but dreamy state of awareness, the Atlantean water. All of that water makes you all sleepy and drowsy and very hypnotizable, easy to operate. Similar to the Lyrans. The Lyrans, which formed the foundation of the genetic DNA, or the genetic code of the human existence in itself. And in that way, the Lyrans were then utilized for their basic DNA building blocks, along with the Pleiadians and other lesser known extraterrestrial elementals as such. Now, knowing all of this and why they wanted to freeze that energy in place was because they could see that it was important under the guise that they wanted to keep the primordial original story in place. In other words, to keep a human, or to project through perceptions that it was supposedly to be good, when in actual fact it was development going forward and progressing, the integration with this plane, that we would have to go into that process because Great Spirit needed to expand. So in actuality, they have neutered the expansion of Great Spirit with their philosophies and their material consciousness. And how they did it was basically to awaken the creator energy inside of people, so that people would start to seek something to conquer. Their analogy was, conquer this reality and you will have riches far beyond. Conquer that nation and you will have riches and control over that country and resources forever and ever. And in that way, that philosophy became the philosophy of materialism, which is actually an actual philosophy. Can you believe that? As opposed to the natural laws, which they also write as philosophy, but they don't give any particular full-bodied analysis of it as such. Essentially, materialism is far more recognized in the courts and in the laws of universities rather than the knowledge of natural law as self. Given all of that as a background, I have to bring in the Orions. As you know, I have been speaking about the Orions for a long time, and I do understand that this channel, our channel, is the only channel that can discuss and give insight on the Orions to its absolute deepest degree of analysis as such, because we have worked very long and hard within each one of us to bring that knowledge forward. And it is in this channel that this information comes through. This pool of knowledge, this fountain of knowledge, is where this information comes in for me to speak it with you. And that is why this channel is very unique. And so, coming back to what I was saying about the Orions, I would like to share with you the ideology that Orion Empire, or the Orions, had, essentially. And I am not referring to the Orion elders. I am not referring to the original Orion Empire, which were originally connected and tied into the gateways for the sacred knowledge to come through in the stars and on the planet, so that when you could look up, you would see as above, and you would see a reflection of it on the ground, and you would be able to say as below. And that was the unhindered gateway for the human to become aware of consciousness, that consciousness ascends and is a reflection. What I see and what I speak goes ahead of me, and then it returns back to me. As above, so below. Okay. I would like to urge you who are listening to this to please slow down the video, go back to the beginning and listen to everything again. Slow down. Take your time, gather your thoughts, make notes, try to understand, and thank you for your patience for letting me explain these videos that are so long. I am grateful, always in gratitude with you as well. So now, the Orions, back to them. The Orion Empire is not the element that we're busy working with, where we're operating with or discussing the Orion second generation children that were given the chance to follow up from the Orion elders as such. The elders had handed it over, the sacred knowledge, to the children, and the children were the ones that wanted to run off with the materialistic consciousness. Except now I can see that the third generation is really having a little bit of an argument with the second generation as such, and really making them question their original authenticity as self. And I think that these parents, or these second generation children who have experienced their children as such, are in a predicament themselves. And that is also their unity of family circuitry that is being dismantled as we speak. Given the fact that now that we've discussed the process of this whole dismantling between the snake's head, which is feminine, and the tail, which is masculine, we are now able to release that energy as such. And the reason the snake's head is female and the tail is masculine is because of the phallic and the feminine sexuality, which devours the tail, which means the creative process in this reality is a constant thing, and there is rarely any space for rebirth as such. So in other words, they have sigilized that seal into a permanent on position, so that it will never stop or never cease to exist, which means they will be able to have their riches forever. These are the ideologies I'm sharing with you, and how we are dismantling it as part of the process that we're working with as such. So now, the Orion second generation later then brought themselves into this reality, on this plane, within this plane, harboring and taking over physical embodiments. So essentially that element is coming from the outside using the original archetypal blueprint, which is star-based, and had then supplanted themselves into physical form in existence here, and have never left. And they have been operating for a long time, as we know. So they were also, as I've said in the Atlantis video in reference to that they have been the ones that have been bringing in the crystal technology in crystallizing the fire itself. And then so what is very important for us to realize is that we are looking at Orion's second generation family that have brought themselves into this reality, but they have been wearing this different cloaks every time, different masks and different protocols that they've been bringing in, but they've brought the same energy in every single bloody time. So now, what we want to address is Orion second generation, also Zion second generation frequency, and that is a subject for another day. But I will urge to you to please read my website to see more in detail why I bring that information in, and why it's important for us to understand that the Matrix movie, and I can keep harping on this, was a psyop, which drove the frequency of the head of the snake and the tail. They have divided them into two colors, blue and red. Blue pole and red pole is the same thing as the extreme left or the extreme right. It's very important for us to understand that if they can keep you divided with those frequencies that they've grafted into the actual feminine and masculine frequencies. In previous videos, we have released the masculine and the feminine principles within ourselves. Please refer to that as well, please. Thank you. Now, to tie this all up for us to understand, the birth of the Aeon supplants this seal. Now that we have dismantled this seal, it is very important for us to understand that the seal is now open, and the birthing of the Mira soul is why we are bringing this information in. Mira soul is essentially a balance between masculine and feminine energy within its third part, which is the heart of understanding. That is parallel, that is as above, so below, as above, so below. In either way, in omnidirectional way, we are masculine and feminine within our original construct, with our heart that is tied to our soul and our spirit as such. Jacob's ladder is the path that the soul would travel within the consciousness and out, a fountainhead. So we know that, to recap that all, the Ouroboros is tied into financial materialism. Materialism is, for example, a quick way to get more money, because you'll be able to see the creative force within you. If you worship, if you create in this way, you will be able to have more riches to live off. Okay? Understand that this is their ideology. Their ideology is based on materialism. Materialism has been philosophized to death and has been used as a very strong foundation to keep the sigil in control, in action. And materialism is the fundamental process of this reality, except it is inverted, so that the attention that you used to have towards your primordial original existence of your divine communion that you have with Great Spirit within you, that you look outside of you to look for the Garden of Eden outside of you, to look for the Fountain of Youth outside of you, to strive to live forever, because that's what they say I should do, and to be eternally beautiful and to be eternally rich and have shiny things in the house, vanity. So in actuality, these particular culprits had used vanity, which is part of the inner reflection of oneself, looking at oneself, and they have seeded into their, like a parasite, the frequency. Now, I'm not saying that we can say the devil made us do all of this. I'm not saying that it's a third party that's making us do all this bad stuff, but I am saying that there is a lot of supporters of the third party that are very powerful in projecting their power into that sigil, which now we've obviously broken up into pieces now. And what there is now could be very essential to our process and existence going forward. So I'm leaving this with you. It is open-ended because it is not completed subject yet, and I will bring more information into this as such. Thank you very much for supporting me and for staying in the path of your original consciousness and infinite consciousness. This is who we are. And I wish for you a beautiful day and an evening in where you're going, and much love. Thank you. Bye.